Mr. Ramsey, Artie, Vinny, you're here, right? Or did I kick him out? Matt, you're here. Kyle, you're here. Mr. Worley, you're here. Okay, we'll wait for all the other screwballs to return. So let's see. Hopefully we should have Mr. Sacco and Mr. Brewer online. If you guys can type in the Twitch chat for me, that would be excellent. So I know you're connected. And all right, Mr. Scott, you made it back after your walk of shame. Am I getting my point across, though? Yeah. So I'm not going to have to do this for the rest of the semester because you guys are just going to do it because you know you're going to get kicked out otherwise. Because supposedly there were no cases of transmission in the classroom, and I'd like to keep it that way. Thank you. Because I don't really feel like getting coronavirus. It would probably kill me because I have asthma. And dying is bad. Okay. So, all right. Well, we'll give the hi, Sam. Good to see you this morning. Hope you're doing all right. So we're just waiting on Mr. Tipman and a few guys to get back here from their walk of shame, and we'll just sit here and twiddle our thumbs.
Probably pissed off coming back.
Huh?
They're probably never coming back.
Well, some of them left their backpacks. I could go like pilfer all their stuff. Like, sweet. I wanted like a new iPhone, and though they probably took those with them. Actually, they sort of have to because that you kind of need your phone to do the COVID thing. Because he doesn't have a phone?
His phone is that old.
Really?
I think it's like a 6. Apparently it just doesn't support it. I guess 6 is old now.
Yeah, well. Yeah, that's a 6, because let's see. I'm on my 4th iPhone. I had a 1, a 4S, a 6S, and now my 10R. In the obligatory Wabash red, right? If you're going to get a phone, you have to get the red one. So, around here. Can't get the yellow one. Put it in a black case. You know, be all colors of the alleged university to the south. So, Mr. Strode, excellent. Welcome back. Okay, so, all right, so who are we missing? 1, 2, 3. Okay, just Mr. Scott. No, you're back. Then who else did I kick out? Vinny. That's who we're waiting on. All right, well, let's kind of get to it then. So, got everybody else online. All right, so welcome. Let's get started with the lame part of the semester. How was the walk of shame? Cold, yeah. Cold and slippery. Actually, you know what really made my point is like if one of you guys slipped and broke your leg on the way back, and then I would have been like, well, you know, if you'd just done your COVID pass, you wouldn't have broken your leg. And I would have felt like 49% jerk and 51% justified in that situation. So anyway, all right, syllabus. Let's get through the lame stuff. There's 2 sections of this class, so got the other half of everybody at 8, and then you guys, we're all going to do the same stuff. And for later on, towards the later part of the semester, we will do some group projects, and I think it'll probably work best if we keep the groups within each of the 2 sections, just because then we're all in the same place at the same time. But I'm not wedded to that idea per se. All right, so the very first thing, it's sort of ironic, the very first thing we talk about in a class is the very last thing we do in the class. namely the final. Okay, so you guys have all been around, so you know how finals work, right? You get the list. Well, you look at your syllabus, it says when your final is. How do your professors know when your final is? Well, they get the sheet from the registrar that says if the class meets at this time, your final is that time, and so on, right? Okay, that presents a problem though if you have two classes that you want to have do the final at the same time, which is the exact situation that I'm in. Okay, namely, I've got both sections of this class, and I want you guys to do the same thing at the same time, um, because it'd be kind of silly to do it twice. The good news is we're not doing an exam because that would be lame, right? I mean, we could, right? Would you guys rather have like a pencil and paper final? Yeah. No, you sure, Mr. Strode? You sure? Okay. No, so what we're going to basically do is like an art exhibition, frankly, with you guys just showing off your stuff, okay, that we make over the course of the semester. Um, and it would obviously work much better if we just do all of that with all 24 of you guys, the 12 from here and the 12 from the other section, just do it at the same time. Now, because you guys all have other classes with other schedules, there is the little known but technically legal Saturday exam time slot. Now, the good news is that, welcome back, Vinny. How was the walk of shame? Yeah. We were just discussing that it would have been 51% hilarious and 49% not if, like, one of you slipped and broke your leg on the way back. And then I would have been like, well, if you'd just done your COVID pass, then, right? Anyway, okay. Yeah, I'm kind of a third derivative of position. No, nobody gets that one. A jerk, right? Position, velocity, acceleration, jerk. You guys know that? Yeah.
No.
Ah. You know what the next ones are? Snap, crackle, and pop. That's actually the terms they use in physics for those. So anyway, all right. So um, the right. So the Saturday between. So like we start at the end of the semester, we have classes on Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday is a reading day with nothing, like last semester was, and then finals start on Thursday. Okay, so there's Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday the next week, but we're going to use the Saturday, which is when nobody has anything, and it'll be much more fun to do an art exhibition on Saturday afternoon than it would be to do it in the morning sometime. So yeah, now, exactly how we're going to do that, of course, I'm going to have to leave TBA for a while because COVID and COVID, um, whether or not we're going to be able to say do something in the library where there's like, lemonade and cookies and people come and look at your stuff, or if we just have to do it all on Twitch. Um, we'll honestly see. I mean, uh, if the college thinks that we can pull off an in-person commencement, then we can probably do this in person. But at the rate, we're going to have to seriously like double the rate of vaccinations, I think, for this to be realistic. Um, we'll see. Anyway, so we'll figure that out a little bit later. But just mark your calendars for that afternoon or early evening, and we'll do something either on campus or on Twitch, whatever. The benefit actually to Twitch is that it doesn't matter where you are, you can see it, but we'll figure that out. So all right, so what are we going to do? You guys all read the course description. I made a minor edit, so we're going to actually spend about a few weeks or so at the beginning using Microsoft MakeCode, and then we'll move into Unreal Engine. And the reason I want to do that is because, well, Unreal Engine is super sophisticated, right? It powers all kinds of AAA titles that you guys have played. So, like what? What Unreal Engine games do you know that you've played? And if any of you say the F word, then the door's right there. No, it's okay. What's the F word here? Fortnite, right? Okay. Anybody want to admit to playing Fortnite?
Religiously.
Really?
I used to play a lot.
Okay.
I was the best on campus sophomore year.
Really?
I was.
Okay. Well,
Master race.
yeah.
Good,
I did play it for a little while myself, but that's okay.
All that smack then? That's crazy.
Huh? But like many years ago, like 3 years ago, a little bit with friends, and half of whom work at Epic, so I kind of was forced to, but whatever. Um, yeah, so Fortnite obviously is made by Epic Games, right? The people that make the engine. The Borderlands series are all Unreal Engine. Now the graphics are obviously heavily modified because they've got that cell shading, sort of cartoony, like, well, cartoon's not really the right way to put it, but that's sort of like anime style to it. The BioShock games used it. Lots of different things. Now, not every AAA title uses it. So for example, Fortnite, or not Fortnite. Sorry, I meant to say Fallout. Right, is using Bethesda technology. Anybody play Doom or Doom Eternal? Right, those are id, which is part of Bethesda now. Different set of tech. But anyway, the Unreal Engine is now one of two major ones, it and Unity, that are open source and oops, and I'm not on this thing. Open source and sort of free to download and use. And basically, the way that Epic makes its money is if you ship a game commercially with their engine and you make more than $1 million a year or something in revenues, then you have to start paying royalties to them. The other, of course, way that they make money is they have their game store and their own games that they sell. Um, but for us, what that means is that this very sophisticated piece of software is free, and we can do stuff with it. But we're going to start with MakeCode, which is also free and very much not super sophisticated. Okay, it was designed for children, basically. And the reason that we're going to do that, and I thought a lot about this over break, is exactly how to get us going. So I'm going to use an analogy, and I've kind of wrestled with it and modified it in my head. So last semester in about September, I started having a few conversations with a guy named Louis Cataldi, who works. His title is really cool. He is the senior educational evangelist at Epic. Okay, pretty cool job title, right? And basically, he oversees like all the partnerships with educational institutions that are using Unreal Engine, all the online learning stuff, all of that, right? And there are colleges you could go to, like an art college, and do a game design major, and from day one, you're doing basically everything involved with game design, programming, art classes, math classes that are specific to the kinds of stuff that you need in graphics programming, all of those kinds of things. And then at the end up with like a BFA, Bachelor's of Fine Arts in something. Okay, so there's a lot of, stuff out there. So I talked with him about this, and since this is the first class really that's going to use Unreal Engine on campus in any systematic way, I think a few guys that have taken. Has anybody taken one of Dr. Abbott's in theater? Any one of his classes? No. What about Dr. Carlson in philosophy on game stuff? Yeah. Are you in one now or?
No.
Okay. So anyway, I'm not the only guy who's sort of interested in teaching game related stuff around here. And Dr. Carlson in philosophy is sort of interested in, like, well, if you shoot the zombie, what does that say philosophically about, right? And it's a little deeper than that, obviously, but or like what philosophically can we learn from playing Portal, say? and then Dr. Abbott in theater is really interested in games from like the storytelling aspect, right? Like, you can have all the cool graphics in the world, but if there's no story or whatever, then it's sort of like, well, okay. Conversely, if you've got a great story and horrible graphics or glitchy stuff, then you've got Cyberpunk. Uh, so, um, has anybody played Cyberpunk, by the way? No?
No, it's more.
Yeah, not yet. I'll wait until they patch it, and uh, then I'll give it a try. Okay, so anyway, um, but talked with him about it, and sort of one of my biggest questions is, okay, where do I start my students, right? Like, if I found myself teaching the first like a Python course, I kind of have in my head how we should start going through Python, what things we should learn first, then when we should start doing, more complicated things, and then, start to open up where you have to start combining different ideas, right? Like I've got a sense for how that would work. And a calculus class, well, I could teach one of those in my sleep. I've been doing it for, my whole career. Um, but something like this, how do I get students started with it, right? Because there's a difference between me just messing around with it as a professional mathematician and who knows a lot about computing, messing around in the engine, to teaching people that some of you who have never programmed anything in your life before. Uh, how am I going to get that started? Okay, so the analogy that he used, and I'm going to riff on this for the rest of the semester because it's a good one, is that uh, if I opened up Unreal Engine, and I could right now, right? Uh, it'd be kind of like if we all drove to Home Depot. We walk into Home Depot, right? So what all do you have at Home Depot? Everything you could imagine, right? And if I walked all into Home Depot and said, okay, build a house, pretty much everything you need to do it is there. Okay. Maybe the HVAC system isn't, all the ductwork would be, but you get the HVAC system from the water heaters there, all the lumber you need would be there, all the masonry you would need would be there, bricks, mortar, all the plumbing stuff, all the wiring to run the electrical. I'm sure you can get all the roof, right? Like everything is there. Do, if I gave you guys like an unlimited credit and a bunch of pickup trucks and a lot somewhere, like in Mud Hollow or whatever, and said build a house, what do you what do you think would happen? It would be an epic fail. Now it might be a really funny epic fail, but it would not go well. Okay, and why? Because you don't know how to build a house. But really, what is building a house? Well, what do you got to do first? Yeah, you got to get a foundation of some sort, right? And that may involve putting some plumbing in to begin with to connect to the city, right? And then you build the structure, and then once you've got all the wood in place, then you put up the insulation and the brickwork and the roof. And then once all that's done, you've got to put all the electrical in and the plumbing in, and then you add all the drywall and flooring, right? Okay, but then, like, okay, the electrical. How do you just put electrical into a house? Well, that makes it sound too simple, right? Like, really, what do? You got the breaker panel, and then you run all the wiring, and then how do you connect an outlet to a piece to wire? Has anybody ever replaced an outlet? No? Really? None of you guys have? All right. Hmm? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, what do you do before you start that, though? That would be a good idea, yes. Okay. Unless you want to electrocute yourself and or set the house, well, probably not set the house on fire. But yeah, you turn off the breaker, right? You pull out the old one. You take depending on the way the wires attach, right? Or like, let's say, has anybody had this happen where like your toilet runs maybe every like 30 minutes or so, just for a few seconds? Okay, if that happens, what's probably the issue? For two possible problems. The floaty thing, okay, which might involve the chain, okay, or if the floaty thing goes down is when water comes in, right? So why would water go down? if the flapper's leaking, right? So if the rubber thing, the flapper, right? If it's old, the rubber degrades, right? You might just need to replace it. Okay, so you go to Home Depot, you go find the toilet aisle or whatever, right? You get the replacement flapper, you go home, you swap it in. It's not rocket science. Okay, but that's a far cry from building an entire house. Okay, make code would be more along the lines of if I said, okay, first we're going to build a Lego house. We could probably manage that. Okay, and we could probably maybe it's a more accurate analogy would be let's imagine that I told you to build a Lego house, but you'd never played with Legos ever before. Like you never even heard the word Lego. Now, that's not the case, right? You guys all had Legos when you were kids, I would imagine. I mean, this being a men's college, I would hope so, right? Um, right. So, but if you'd never seen them and I handed you a couple of bricks, it would take you all of about 5 seconds to be like, oh, they snap together. I can snap them together in different ways. And then if I hand you a bucket full of them, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, and then sooner or later we'd have a house, right? Wouldn't be that hard. And then maybe you get fancy and you add like an elevator and doors and windows and cool stuff, right? That's kind of what we're going to do with MakeCode. But in the process of learning how to build something out of Legos, we'll sort of get the idea for how to do this in the real or Unreal, as the case may be, engine. Um, okay, so Unreal Engine, though, is, yeah, no, we're not doing KSP. I forgot to change the label on my um, uh, game stream. I'm sorry. It's my bad. Got some cool videos on KSP, though, if you want to check them out. Um, okay, so, right, so that's what we're going to do. We'll spend, like I said, a few weeks with MakeCode, and then we'll start to transition over to Unreal Engine. Now, the other thing you guys are going to be doing, we'll start this, kind of structured in my mind. I don't want you guys to be learning a new thing, more than one new thing simultaneously. Okay, so we're going to start with MakeCode. Then I'm going to show you guys the blogging platform. We'll keep working with MakeCode at the time. Then we'll get into Unreal Engine. Then after we've done Unreal Engine for a little bit and we'll start doing group work with Unreal Engine, then we have to worry about version control, and that's a whole other ball of wax. So let's suppose, so what's version control? If I asked you guys to do a group paper or a group presentation for a class, right? Like let's say you're in your French class and you have to do a presentation, group presentation. How are you guys going to pull it off? How are you going to do it? Or a group paper? Yeah. Okay, so there's the divide and conquer approach, and then at the end you've got to combine everything. Okay, or what would be another way to collaboratively put the thing together all together? I mean, you could all huddle around somebody's laptop, or could use Google Docs, right? Presentation, doc sheets, whatever, and have one file that everybody is collaboratively editing simultaneously. Well, that's really cool that you can do that, but it's not just magic, right? There's a lot of stuff underneath the hood. Okay, so version control would be more like what Mr. Troy was describing of where you're all working on different things. Okay, but what about if you write an introduction and I write an introduction, and then we have two sets of introduction slides? Well, okay, there's that, right? But there might be things where our stuff overlaps, right? And then we've got to merge our content together, okay? Or what about if, like, um, you want to work on the introduction, but then I also need to add something to it, and we both try and check it out at the same, right? So we have to use software called version control stuff to basically keep track of who's got control over what files at what time, and to be able to merge everything back together and keep it all straight without having 16 conflicted versions. Okay, so GitHub or Git is one such system to do this, um, and it's a pretty common one in industry. And they've got a really cool educational, like classroom type thing that I have been setting up. So we'll use that when we need it, which is when we get into group stuff with Unreal, but that's a while out. Okay. So the idea is we're learning one new thing or never learning multiple new software packages simultaneously. Particularly once we get into Unreal, because the learning curve is like at first is kind of a cliff. Okay. All right. So that's the idea. In terms of PC hardware, when we get to Unreal Engine, it needs some pretty beefy stuff. These are the bare minimum system specs that I got from Epic. Uh, so it'll run on your laptops, Macs even. It won't run great. Okay. Where it will run great would be on gaming class desktop PCs that have uh, an actual graphics card, gaming class laptops, or all the machines in the back of the library on the first floor. Okay, so the Ed Tech Center that's got all the iMacs and those big PCs and stuff, those guys are all going to be able to run this thing like butter, no problem. And so, you don't have to go, well, you couldn't buy an RTX card right now if you wanted to, but good luck. Did anybody else manage to score a PlayStation or an Xbox this break? No. You did? Wow. Did you have to pay twice what it was worth? You got lucky. Did you get tempted to flip it on eBay for twice what it was worth?
No, I actually, my friend's mom was like buying and flipping it. She just sold it to my parents for like full price.
Okay. Well, that was nice. But yeah, that's right. Like you can't find basically any PC hardware, new PC hardware right now, or PlayStations or Xboxes because of dirty people like your friend's mom. Yeah. So did you manage to score something? Yeah. So, there's I forget who said this, but a thing is worth what its purchaser will pay for it. Right? It's hard to get mad at people for exploiting free market economy, but at the same time, you can get mad at them for exploiting free market economy. Um, yeah. So anyway, um, but we're fortunate that the back of the library, like I said, has the iMacs are all quad core at least with discrete graphics cards. The PC, same thing. They're pretty beefy machines, so they'll be able to handle Unreal Engine without any trouble. And after we start getting into Unreal Engine, and I feel like we're ready to start kind of pulling the training wheels off a little bit, we'll actually start having class over in the library rather than here. But I'll let you know when that transition will start. We'll have some small assignments and obviously some bigger ones. Think of the small assignments like homework, and think of the big ones like projects. Um, you're going to be doing some blogging. We'll talk about that next week. Um, Blogging is really a fancy form of documentation. Um, it's important to sort of document the creative process, but also the technical process. And really, the class, like, we're kind of melding the two. It's going to be technical, but it's also going to be creative. Um, okay. Because what we're not going to do is I'm not going to say, okay, I want you to program a database that has customer names and phone numbers and then can search for a customer. Boring. Okay. What we're going to do instead is, okay, you've got build tic tac toe. That's more fun, even though technically there's a lot of the same stuff would be necessary, okay, to make it work. Grades. I hate talking about this stuff because it's bullying. Um, I had to be a jerk with you guys about your go passes, but I made my point. So do I have to be a jerk ever again? No, because you're all going to show up with go passes. Okay. What happens though if you have a stop or you have a go, but you really shouldn't be going? Okay. So for example, if Sparks has done a number on your gastrointestinal system, okay, or Cisco or whatever it is you guys have at the fraternity houses, and you all know what I'm talking about, what happens? Or what should you do? And we know what happens. Probably shouldn't come to class, right? In person, anyway. Um, yeah. So if that happens, okay, or you get a stop either because the college told you so, your roommate got COVID, or something. I don't know, right? It's going to happen. Don't come to class. And if you're able to participate in class but not physically be here, then be on Discord and or Twitch. Not every day I'll be streaming on Twitch because many of the days of class I want to use sort of like studio time where we're working rather than me just yelling at you, right? It's much more fun if we actually do stuff. Um, but be on either Discord or Twitch as appropriate. If you can't participate in real time, which could happen, if you broke your leg because you slipped on the ice and you got to go get it put in a cast, right? It's probably a good reason to not be in class. Then review whatever we did after the fact and reach out to me, basically. You guys need to be proactive with me, okay? Stuff's going to happen. If your appendix ruptures the night before class and you're in the ER, I'm not really going to expect an email until you're after the fact, right? Hopefully that won't happen to anybody, okay? But if it's like you got to stop pass, we're going to have a studio day. Hey, what are we going to do? Let me know as soon as you can, okay? So I can work with you guys. And before and after class, sanitize your workstation. Also, if you go down to the bathroom and then come back, make sure you've used a hand sanitizer and stuff. Um, that's, I think, most important when we get over to the library and we start really using the hell out of those machines because they get a lot of use during the day and at night. And I don't want somebody catching COVID from a dirty keyboard. I mean, it is theoretically possible, but so let's just be real clean. And I'll take attendance. Basically, I really shouldn't have to say any of this. Don't be a douchebag because I have a low tolerance for bullshit. Okay? Pretty straightforward. Mr. Ramsey can tell you. He's a previous victim.
I'm sorry, what?
That I have a low tolerance for bullshit.
That's true, but I've never been subject to being on bullshit.
Yeah, you've never been on my bad list.
Okay. We had a great comps discussion.
Oh, we did. We did have a great comps discussion. So Mr. Ramsey here happens to be a rhetoric major, CS minor. And of course, because of comps, is a senior, as you guys. We had the very fortunate luck of the draw that he got Professor Sarah Drury for the major and me for the minor. And, it was just terrible. There was nothing to talk about on the intersection between rhetoric and technology nowadays. Absolutely nothing for us to discuss. No Twitter bans, no Facebook bans, nothing. It was really unfortunate. Yeah, no riots at the Capitol. Yeah. So anyway.
50 minutes is nothing. So if you guys just want to get a rhetoric major, go for it. No conversation at all. Kidding, I'm sarcastic. That sounded really serious.
Sorry, I'm getting comments on. I forgot to change the last time I streamed over break. I was doing Kerbal Space Program for an admissions thing, and we were programming autopilot scripts and auto landing so that you could land the first stage booster kind of SpaceX style. And so right now, Twitch thinks I'm streaming Kerbal Space Program, and so some guy just came into the channel. He's like, "Wait a minute, this isn't KSP," and yeah. So yeah, I'll fix that. Sorry, man. Yeah, no, thanks. It's the Surface retrograde. Yeah, I need to fix that because um, I think it's using orbit retrograde, which is why the Surface stuff is off a little bit, and hence why I had several rapid unscheduled disassemblies. That's what happens when a rocket blows up. It doesn't blow up. It's a rapid unscheduled disassembly. So yeah. Anyway. All right. So just don't be a jerk. Everything will be cool. Okay. And this is kind of important, like especially now that it's cold and miserable outside. Like, I know sitting in bed on Twitch would be way more fun and way more comfortable, but come to class if you are able. Okay. All right. So that's it for the boring stuff. Let's get into MakeCode a little bit. So if you go to makecode.com, all right, you can sign in if you want, make an account. And we're going to use Arcade, which is built around essentially trying to build old school Game Boy games. Okay, so you guys, when you were kids, who had a Game Boy? Which ones did you guys have? 2DS, Game Boy Color, 3DS. What did you have? Okay, who had the classic original Game Boy, black and white, the whole? No, yeah, okay. So I never owned a Game Boy. I had a Nintendo and the Super Nintendo, and then I went to the PC world. But um, my dentist, when I was a kid, they had Game Boys in the waiting room with Tetris. That was it. But it was the coolest thing ever to be sitting there playing Tetris or whatever, right? Waiting for the dentist. I saw that same dentist until I went off to graduate school. They still had the Game Boys in the waiting room. And I still sat there and played Tetris on the exact same Game Boy when I was 8, right? So, anyway, uh, this one's in color instead of grayscale like the original Game Boy was. But basically, the idea is you're programming stuff a la old school 2DS or Game Boy Color kind of things. Okay, real pixelated, retro, not fancy graphics. Um, Let me make a quick new project here, and let me just call it something. Okay. Um, so you've got your little screen over there, and you can actually buy hardware. So let me actually show you guys this because it is kind of cool. So I got one of these over Christmas just to kind of play with, but uh, it's all the parts, little board, screen, all of that to do this. Now, obviously, those aren't my epic nails. Um, I don't do the fingernail thing. Um, Adafruit is a company. They're based in New York that they make and sell all kinds of electronicsy stuff for like building circuit boards and doing kind of projects like that. But the lady that started it she goes by Lady Ada and hence Ada Fruit, right? Anyway, so she demos all their products. They have like a YouTube thing every week where they demo live stuff. So that's her fingernails that you're looking at, fingers. Anyway, so here's the idea, right? You got your joystick or D-pad, you've got an A and B button, then you got a start and a select button, and you're programming, real, not super fancy graphics, but simple, simple Nintendo kind of class games. Um, Anything you could kind of imagine. But it's hardware that will run it. But on the online platform, you've got the little simulator here, so you can kind of see how it would work. You can actually hook up game controllers to a PC and then use those in here. So if you happen to have like, I think Xbox controllers will work with Windows no problem. A few other things. So, right. So you start with, of course, nothing. And what I want to talk about to kind of get ourselves um, started is what's called object-oriented programming. Okay. So the idea behind object-oriented programming is that you have uh, a category of object, and then you have representatives of that category. Okay, so I'll just use a cheesy example here. Let me say that I have the category of objects called food. Okay, and I can say, oops, let me just pick this hamburger or mushroom or whatever I picked here. Okay, so I've got this mushroom, right? So this mushroom is an object in the class food. It has art that's associated with it, namely the mushroom graphics, but I just as easily could have used the hamburger graphics. Okay, so it's still a food object, but it looks like something. Okay, and this object has a name, this particular one. So, for example, I could say, Let me call this mush1, okay? I could have another mushroom that is itself a representative of the food category and has a mushroom-looking picture and has a different name. How about mush2? Whatever, okay? But they are both members of the category of objects called food, okay? Make sense? I could have a category, so like where it says food there, I can make my own category names. So just food happens to be one of the default ones in MakeCode. Um, but if I were making a game, right, what kind of categories might I want for different things? Well, I've definitely got a player, okay, whatever that's going to be. What else? What else? Like, what could food be, kind of a more generally speaking? Yeah, yeah, power up of some sort, right? Maybe it adds health. Maybe it gives you, but like imagine Mario, right? Okay, what like just classic old Super Mario Brothers for the old 8-bit Nintendo. Oh, by the way, does anybody still have an 8-bit Nintendo? What about a 16-bit? You do? Huh? Back at home or okay? What about a Super Nintendo? No, Sega Genesis. I'm looking to buy some of this old stuff, so make me an offer. Okay. Um, no, and actually, the reason that I want to buy a bunch of this old hardware is not purely for nostalgia, but because um, I want to teach an advanced architecture course, which would be like a CS major level thing where we program old Nintendos. So yeah, but it'd be like what you guys did last semester on steroids. Yeah. Well, in some respects on steroids, in some respect with your leg in a cast, right? Because it's 8-bit hardware. But anyway, Mr. Ramsey took an architecture course last semester with me, so yeah. Okay, but yeah, so think the old school classic Mario. What kind of things are there in that game that we would need to think about? Yeah. Huh? Enemies, right? Okay, and there's different categories within enemy, um, but there's enemies. Okay, some of them shoot projectiles. So, for example, the Hammer Bros, right, throw the hammers at you. Bowser shoots fire. Okay, what else? What other things would be needed in a game? Different objects, yeah. Okay, the different obstacles in the map, okay, which are part of the map itself in a way, right? So you've got the floor or the ground, right? Or maybe not actually in some of the levels, right? You've got water, you've got lava, you've got the pipes. Certain pipes you can actually do stuff and interact with. There's coins. Okay, so there's a class of there'd be a class of objects like pick upable objects, which would be stuff like the coins, the mushrooms that the growth mushrooms, or the fire flower, or the star, or in think later Mario, like Mario 3, you had the Tanuki suit, right? When you get the feather or whatever, and you can then fly around. Right, so all those different things are objects that would be in some sort of category like pickups. Okay. Now in MakeCode, you can't have categories of categories. In Unreal Engine and real programming, you would. You could have object, and then within that you could have power up or item, and within that you could have mushroom, star, coin, something else, right? MakeCode, you can't quite do that kind of hierarchical structure, but you can do enough to get the idea, right? That we could have a pickup or a power up category, and within that could be different things like a coin, a star, a mushroom, or whatever. Okay. Or we could have different categories for coin, mushroom, star, whatever. The benefit of having one category is we don't have to duplicate as much code. Okay. All right, but does that sort of get the idea that of what an object is and it's a member of a class? Okay, now in MakeCode, what they call classes are kinds, right? So there is the kind, the category, food, and within that you have different kinds of objects or different things, okay, different representatives from the food class. In Unreal, these are called classes, okay, and that's what they're called in real object-oriented programming. So yeah, okay, so good, right? So I've got one mushroom. I could put 5 mushrooms there if I wanted. They would each need to have different names because they're different instantiations of a thing. Uh, I could have mushrooms and hamburgers and tacos, and maybe they're all equivalent. Like maybe they both, you touch a mushroom, you touch a taco, you touch a hamburger. What happens? You get a health point back or something. I don't know, right? Maybe it's different. Like maybe a hamburger gives you 2 health points, and a taco only gives you 1, and a mushroom gives you -1. I don't know, right? Um, you could have, well, we already talked about the enemies would be a good category, right, to have. And so the defaults that come in the game are um, player, projectile, food, and enemy. Okay, so food maybe is power ups, enemies that makes sense. Projectile would be like one of the things that we'll start actually with our very first little micro project is sort of a space shooter like Galaga, right? Where you've got your little spaceship and you fly, and then there's enemies that and you want to shoot them. Well, the thing you shoot is of the category projectile. Okay, make sense? Yeah. You can make the categories anything you want, like in terms of name, but obviously making them descriptive is good. Okay, so let's kind of look at all the different stuff that you've got here, right? Um, so the board or this little menu down the left. So let's sort of think about that like you go to Home Depot, right? And you don't go to Home Depot and everything is just scattered about randomly. That would be kind of annoying if that were the case, right? It's organized, right? So you go into Home Depot and there's the lighting aisle, and then there's the electrical aisle, and then there's the plumbing aisle, and then there's the HVAC, right? So everything is sorted into different categories based on what's there. Uh, and similarly here, right? So all of our different pieces that we could build our programs out of are sorted into different categories based on what they do. So sprites would be the visual objects that are on the screen. Okay, so your enemies, your player, your power-ups, possibly user interface, like all the stuff that's going to be on the screen. You're also going to have background stuff, which is under scene. Okay, so this would be like if you were making the Mario game, um, this would be where you would put the um, like the level, right? Or like say a Zelda kind of game, right? You'd have the different map that you're walking around in. Okay, that would be all under scene. Um, okay, there's tons of stuff here in sprites because, well, we need to be able to create objects. Once we've created something, we might want to move where it is or allow it to describe how it moves around. We can make it do cool stuff, so effects. Projectiles, this is some stuff that handles all the physics for you. But this one's in particular kind of important, overlap, okay? So how do I know, for example, that I've touched a mushroom? If I'm a player and there's a mushroom in a game engine, how do I know that I've touched it? Well, if the art assets are overlapping geometrically, then that means I'm touching it, right? And so I should do something, okay? And here you see the little drop downs where it says player and player. You can have different types of interactions. So if I, as the player, touch a food object, one thing should happen. But if I touch an enemy object, something else should happen, right? And this way I can do kind of both things. Um, Life cycle, if I can delete an object, if I can create an object into existence, I ought to be able to remove it from existence, right? And that's what the delete thing is there for. I can make something so that like when an object is created, something happens, or when it's destroyed, something happens. I can actually change and this is kind of funny, I can change the category of an object, right? So let's say, for example, I've got this mushroom, and it starts out as being part of the food category. I could change that particular mushroom to now be an enemy. I'm not sure why I would want to do that, but like, I don't know, maybe you touch it and every mushroom you touch, there's a 1 in 5 chance it turns into a skeleton or something. I don't know, right? Maybe, right? Yeah, so you can change categories. That's a little weird, and in Unreal Engine, I don't think you can do that, but because it just doesn't make sense. What you would do instead would be say, okay, there's this mushroom, and a 1 in 5 chance that I delete the mushroom and then spawn in an enemy at the exact same spot. That'd probably be the better way to handle it. Okay. Okay, so there's all this stuff in there, right? Game that's going to handle stuff like title screen, dialogue boxes, right? So think of like, well, okay, you guys are young enough. Pokemon. Did you guys play Pokemon when you were kids? No?
Wasn't a big fan.
No, you weren't allowed. Okay. Well, I'm too old to have played Pokemon as a kid, right? So Pokemon kind of only became a thing, and I was, I think, in high school, early high school at about that point. And let's just say that Pokemon was not on my radar at that point in time. Quake 2 was, and the original Unreal for that matter. Um, yeah, because the original Unreal game came out, I think it was at the end of my freshman year of high school. And oh my God, it was amazing. It was unreal. Yeah. Let me give you an idea though. Back then, most people did not have discrete like 3D cards. You had a 2D graphics card, but that was it. And the 3D graphics card was actually a separate piece of hardware. What resolution do you guys play your games at? Those of you who play on PC? Yeah, 1080p, maybe 1440p if you're really flexing. If you're a Fiji, 4K, uh, right, on a RTX 3090
With their 60 hertz monitor.
or 120 hertz monitor.
No, they're not getting the effect. They don't understand the difference.
Oh, yeah, well, the Fijis?
I'm just joking.
Oh, okay. No. Sorry, it's hard to not knock on different fraternities around here. It's fun. So anyway, back in the day, right, if you didn't have a graphics card like that, you had to run everything in software rendering. And we ran these things at 320 by 240, right?
Seems fun.
Yeah, like and if you got a graphics card, you could run it 640 by 480. Oh my God, it was amazing. Yeah, so you kids these days have no idea. Anyway, let's see, what else do we have in here? Music. The music stuff is also where the sound effect stuff is. It's kind of lame. Sound effects you can definitely do, and you can import like different things. The music, though, there's no way to like import an MP3 or something along those lines. You basically have to program it note by note, and it's really kind of kludgy. But whatever. Um, Info, again, that's going to be like got stuff for like dialogue boxes and whatnot. Loops and logic. This is what makes programming. Okay, because if I wanted to create 50 mushrooms, am I going to individually create 50 mushrooms? Hell no, right? I'm going to tell the computer, do this procedure 50 times, where the procedure is create mushroom and maybe put it somewhere randomly on the map. I don't know, right? I'm not going to program it one at a time. That's if I can avoid it, okay? So that's going to be the stuff in loops, right? Where you want to repeat a procedure of some sort over and over again. Logic is going to be anytime you make an if-then kind of statement. So like if, well, like here would be a good example. Let's say there's a locked door and you come up and you touch it. What should happen? Okay, but if it's locked, say, yeah, okay. unless you say also have a key. So if you're touching the door and you have a key, open. Otherwise, make a sound. Did you guys catch that? It was okay, just making sure. Right, so something like that, where you're making statements that involve the words if, or, and, not, and any combination thereof. Okay, all of that stuff is logic. Now, has anybody taken Dr. Carlson's symbolic logic class? What about Math 108? This dude, right? Okay, well, anyway, you study that stuff in spades in those kinds of classes, okay? Um, but those things are what make computers computers. Otherwise, they're just glorified calculators. But it's the ability to make decisions, yes, no decisions, that makes a computer a computer. Variables, um, well, there's different kinds of variables, right? We could store numbers, we could store text, like a phrase. We could store, well, like mushroom one is a variable, it's the name of this object. Um, I could have like if we were programming Mario, what kind of variables might we need? Your score, the number of lives you have, the time left in the map, um, how many coins you've picked up, right? All of those sorts of things, right? Those are all variables. You store them, you read from them, you write to them, etc. Okay, and then math, of course. Well, that's where all the fun stuff is, at least from my perspective. But and then in advanced stuff, there's a few kind of fun things like functions, for example, and this is where it'll get really kind of fun. Um, so let's say that I want to make two mushrooms. So let me just duplicate this and let me rename this one mush2, and let me just move one of them to someplace on the screen, just whatever. Okay. So, oh, and then I need to say mush1, right? So you see how it had that warning because there was no object called mySprite. Okay, so if I run this, right, it creates the two sprites and then it moves or creates one sprite, then moves it to a different position, and then it creates a second sprite. And so that way I can see that there actually are two things. They're not on top of each other. Okay, but let's say that I wanted to create like 30 of these, and uh, what I want to do is, so I'm going to make a function called, say, make mushrooms, and what I'll do is take this stuff and put it there, and then call make mushrooms. Okay, so now what will happen is when it hits this dark blue block, call mushrooms, it'll go over here and say, oh, what does make mushrooms do? I'm going to do everything in that little block. And then it does it. And then it would return, so like, let's say, for example, I could do something like this. I could say mushrooms created. Okay, so what would happen is the game would start, call mushrooms would happen, I'd come over here, I'd do in order everything here, and then I would come back, and then after the mushrooms are created, it would put this text up on the screen. Okay, but the order is important. Is it clear how we know what the order is, what it is? Okay, all right. Now, the other cool thing about MakeCode, and this is why I kind of like it better than Scratch now, because I can do the following. I can click that magic button and bam, I have my exact same code, but now it's in Python instead of in this graphical stuff. And if I make a change in the Python and I go back to the blocks, it'll be updated as long as I make a valid change, right? So for example, where I've got that thing where it says mush1 equals sprite.create image, blah, 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 I could copy and paste that and say maybe make mush3, and then up at the top where it says global mush1, mush2, add in mush3 there. And then if I would go back to the blocks, now mush3 would be one of the blocks in there. Okay, so this is kind of nice, this the fact that you can go back and forth between Python style and block style, or JavaScript style for that matter, because you can use something like this as a transition for once you're sort of past novice programming and you want to transition to doing everything fully in Python or C or whatever, right? This sort of shows you how to make that kind of leap. Now, for the most part, we're going to work in graphical stuff. When we get to Unreal Engine, we'll basically do everything in Blueprint, which is the graphic version there. Okay, so does this kind of make sense? Yeah, the idea here. All right, so let's talk. What are the next steps? Okay. Let me go back to Canvas. Oh, that's not that's the roster. I want Canvas. Okay, so here's our Canvas page, right? And got a bunch of links. Join my Discord server if you haven't already. I've got my Twitch channel linked there, and the Twitch will keep recordings for 2 weeks. But basically, right after class, I take the recording and I export it over to YouTube, and they all go up to the math department's YouTube channel. Which, at this point I could probably be rolling in the ad revenue, but I made Twitch affiliate last semester from teaching. So, yeah, right. I'm going to be rolling in the dough. No, not really. I'm not going to monetize it because I don't want you guys to have to watch an ad before class. That's kind of lame. Sort of a minor ethical problem there. Anyway, okay, so already got some assignments in here. And what I want to do, especially because I've got 2 sections of you guys, is I don't like to have to repeat myself, meaning I don't want to teach the same stuff twice back to back. That's boring. Okay. So, what I want, not all, but most of our classes to be is more like studio time where we're doing things interactively. I'm not just yelling at you. Okay. So, um, so the first assignment is I made it due 23:59, but basically I need anything that's due 23:59, right, is have it done before you get to class the next morning is the idea. So what I'd like you guys to do for Thursday is, let's just go into the assignment here, right? So if you click on this link or you go into Make Code, let me go back to the, oops, let me close this and say we're here. Okay, let me go back to home. Right, there's a bunch of tutorials, but there's this one, Game Maker Guide. Okay, and we're going to go through these 3 things. So before class on Thursday, I want you guys to have finished to here. Okay, so you'll have sort of this brief overview of Make Code as a whole. It'll talk a lot about some of the stuff that we did today, and then it's going to run you through the very beginnings of making a sort of Galaga style spaceship game. Okay, so you guys will all be here by the beginning of class on Thursday, and then on Thursday, what we're going to do is you guys are going to add cool shit to it. Okay, technical term, right? And that I want to open up to creativity. Like, okay, so what is it going to show you how to do? Projectiles, enemies, fueling up so that you can get boosts. Well, what else could you do? All kinds of stuff. Maybe there's a boss level. Maybe there's right? Like your imagination, right? Okay, well then you've got an idea. Now let's think about how to actually implement it. Okay, so that's sort of the idea. I want it to sort of be like studio work. And then for early next week, we're going to do the same sort of idea with this other one on platformers. Okay, and then we'll talk about like a puzzle game and kind of progressively ramp up what we're doing. And then at some point, I'll turn you guys loose and say, okay, just make something, build a house. But that point, you'll know, okay, well, I've done electrical, I've done plumbing, and I've done roofing, so I think I can put these 3 things together. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of the idea. Question, preguntas, fragen. No? Okay, so here's what you'll do. Let's say that I go to this and I have completed the tutorial. So the way the tutorials work is this thing up at the top, it's got the sort of tells you what to do, and then there's the code stuff down below. Okay, so right here it's all finished, right? Or not actually quite, because what happens when I touch an enemy? nothing. I should lose a health point, right? So it's not finished, but let's say that I had done everything I'm supposed to do, okay? Then if I click Save to My Projects, what it does is it basically copies everything you've done and puts it in a new project that's outside of the tutorial mode, okay? With which you could do whatever you want. But in particular, what you can do is you can share it, okay, which means you need to pick up a name for it. You hit publish, you get a link. That link is what you're going to turn into Canvas before you come to class Thursday. Okay, the thing to your project. Okay, then in class on Thursday, what we'll do is you'll make a copy of that project and we'll edit the copy of it, right? So that you've got, this would be like when you're writing a paper, right? You've got rough draft and then you've got second draft and then you've got, right, you've got separate files or separate copies of it so that you can look at the history of its development over time. Not, well, and the other reason you want to do this is because let's say you have a working thing and then you start adding a bunch of stuff and you break everything and you decide, nope, I need to go back and start over from this thing. Well, if you didn't save a copy of that, guess what? You're boned. And that sucks. Okay. So, right. So that's how we'll do this. But it's important if you don't share it, well, A, you don't get the URL, but B, I can't see it. Right. And then you fail. Makes me a sad panda. All right, Gucci, kind of get the idea what's how we're gonna get started? Oui? No. Oui? Très bien. Okay. All right, well, yeah, keep an eye on Canvas because that's where I'll post assignment details and announcements and things like that. Basically, I get really annoyed when you guys don't answer emails. Now, I know you get so many emails as students, particularly if there's an email war that gets started. Has there been one yet this semester or this year? Well, there's been one this academic year. I remember those. But yeah, um, yeah. Anyway, join the Discord channel, and let's see what else. Yeah, pay attention to your email. If I start text messaging you, that means you're ignoring emails, and I'm trying to get a hold of you quickly, and then that makes me a sad panda. Um, yeah. So anyway, don't be a jerk, and everything will be fine. Question? Preguntas? Fragen? No? All right. Well, we'll quit here then. Get cracking to start making your Space Explorer or whatever it's called. All right. See you guys later. And Ivalol, thanks for coming. Sorry, I forgot to change the label from KSP to Science and Technology. This is my first day of one of my classes. And yeah,